Captain Jin Park stood at the command center of Earth's Global Defense Headquarters, his eyes fixed on the large screen. The message that appeared 12 hours ago had thrown the entire planet into chaos. After centuries of searching the stars, humanity had their answer. They weren't alone. "Play it again," Jin ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The technician nodded and tapped her console. The alien transmission flickered back to life. Strange symbols danced across the screen before being replaced by a translation. Asterisk to the inhabitants of Sol 3. We, the Galactic Council, acknowledge your radio signals. Your system has been marked for evaluation. Prepare for contact asterisk. 3 months passed in a flurry of global preparation. Nations that had been enemies for generations suddenly found common purpose. Jin was selected to lead the first contact team, a decorated officer with diplomatic training and a calm demeanor that rarely faltered. The alien ship arrived exactly when promised. It descended through Earth's atmosphere with impossible grace, landing on the specially constructed platform in the neutral territory of New Zealand. Jin straightened his uniform as the ship's doors slid open with a soft hiss. The aliens emerged, tall and slender with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their leader stepped forward, 7 feet tall with markings that suggested importance. "I am Ambassador Toll of the Galactic Council. We represent 2,000 species across 8 spiral arms," the alien said through a device at its throat. Its voice sounded almost musical. Jin bowed slightly. "Captain Jin Park of Earth, we welcome you to our world." The diplomatic reception that followed was tense but cordial. Earth's leaders presented humanity's achievements: quantum computers, fusion energy, the beginnings of faster-than-light theory. Jin watched the aliens carefully and noticed something troubling. Despite their polite nods, there was something in their posture, a certain dismissiveness. On the 3rd day, Jin followed Ambassador Toll and 2 advisors into the garden outside the conference hall. The aliens didn't notice him as he approached, thinking he was still inside with the other human representatives. "These demonstrations are becoming tiresome," one advisor said in their own language, unaware that their translator was still active, and Jin could hear every word. "Quaint efforts," Toll replied with a gesture that resembled a shrug. "Another primitive species seeking the stars before they're ready." The second advisor made a sound like bells tinkling. "At least they're not as backward as the Nebulon cluster species. Remember how they tried to impress us with their solar collectors. The Council's classification will be as expected. Pre-emergent with limited rights," Toll said. "We should finish our assessment quickly. There are 3 more systems to evaluate this cycle." Jin stepped back quietly, his face calm despite the anger building inside him. He returned to the meeting room and watched with new eyes as Earth's scientists eagerly demonstrated their latest breakthrough in nanomedicine, a technology that had saved millions of lives. Ambassador Toll nodded politely, but Jin now saw the boredom hidden behind those alien eyes. Earth wasn't being evaluated as an equal. They were being judged like children showing crude drawings to adults. That evening, Jin called an emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. "They're not impressed by anything we've shown them," he explained. "I believe their technology is far beyond ours, and they view us as primitives barely worth their time." The room grew quiet as his words sank in. "Then what do we do?" asked the Secretary General. Jin looked around the table at the concerned faces. "We stop trying to impress them with what we have now. Instead, we show them what humans do best. We adapt, we overcome, we surprise. The Galactic Council may think they know what humanity is capable of, but they haven't seen anything yet." The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched so high that the ceiling vanished in mist. Dr. Hannah Kim stood with Captain Jin Park and 3 other human representatives on a small platform that hovered in the center of the room. Around them, thousands of alien delegates from across the galaxy watched from rising tiers of seats. Hannah had never felt so small. The journey to the Council station had taken 3 weeks in the ship provided by Ambassador Toll. They were the first humans to travel beyond the solar system, Yet their achievement felt hollow now. High Counselor Mev, a being with crystalline features that caught the light, raised 6 slender arms for silence. The chamber quieted immediately. The evaluation of Sol 3, called Earth by its natives, is complete. Mev's voice resonated without seeming to come from any specific part of their body. The species designation human is now recognized in council records. Hannah straightened her back. This was the moment they had prepared for. Pre-emergent species classification confirmed, announced High Counselor Mev. Level 2 technological development. Biological viability. Moderate. Expansion potential. Limited. A ripple of sounds, the alien equivalent of murmurs, spread through the chamber. From several sections, Hannah heard what the translator identified as laughter. "That can't be right," whispered Jun, the physicist on their team. "We showed them our quantum computing advances, our genetic medicine." Mev continued as if they hadn't spoken. "As per Council Directive 5479, humans will remain confined to their solar system until deemed sufficiently advanced. Technology transfer is restricted to Category 1 basics only. Their application for council membership is denied for a minimum period of 300 cycles." Laughter grew louder from the lower tiers. Hannah noticed a group of delegates with facial tentacles making exaggerated gestures that seemed to mock human body movements. "We request permission to speak," Hannah said, stepping forward. Mev tilted their crystalline head. "The council recognizes the Earth representative. With respect, High Counselor, humanity has achieved space travel, eliminated most diseases, and developed artificial intelligence. Our potential is precisely measured by council standards," interrupted a delegate with blue scales. "Your species still wages war against itself. You've barely touched your nearest planetary neighbor. Your technology is mostly imported from other species' outdated designs. We've only just met other species," Jin pointed out. "How could we have imported? Your broadcasting signals have been leaking into space for centuries," the blue delegate said with what sounded like a sneer. "You've been borrowing ideas without knowing it." More laughter filled the chamber. "The decision is final," Mev announced. "Earth representatives will be returned to their system with the Council's verdict. A monitoring station will be established at the edge of your system to ensure compliance." The platform began to lower, signaling the end of their hearing. Hannah stood frozen, unable to believe how quickly their hopes had been dismissed. Back on the ship, the human delegation sat in stunned silence. They were halfway to Earth when Hannah finally broke down. She slammed her fist against the meeting table so hard that the holographic display flickered. "They treat us like children," she said to Jin, her voice shaking with rage. "Did you see how they laughed? 300 cycles. That's nearly 500 Earth years." Jin nodded grimly. "I counted 17 species that seemed to enjoy our humiliation especially. We prepared for months, brought our best technology, our most compelling arguments." Hannah ran her hands through her hair. None of it mattered. They had already decided. "They think they know us," Jun said quietly. "They've categorized us, filed us away." Hannah looked up, her eyes suddenly clear and focused. "But they haven't seen what humans do when underestimated." Jin leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," Hannah said, a slow smile forming on her face, "that being underestimated is the greatest advantage we could have asked for. Let them think we're harmless. Let them laugh." She pulled out a small device and scanned the room for listening devices. Finding none, she continued. "While they're laughing, we'll be learning, adapting, finding the gaps in their perfect galactic system." Jin studied her face. "That sounds dangerously close to defiance of a council directive." "Not defiance," Hannah said. "Just creative compliance. They expect us to wait quietly for 500 years. Let's show them what humanity can accomplish when given a challenge." 6 months after the humiliating visit to the Galactic Council, a small group gathered in a laboratory deep beneath Sol. The facility had once been a nuclear shelter, now repurposed for research that couldn't risk satellite detection. The Council's monitoring station at the edge of the solar system watched for spacecraft, not what happened under Earth's surface. Dr. Tamin flicked his hand across the holographic display, bringing up a series of brain scans. The images glowed blue and red in the dim room, casting strange shadows across the faces of the dozen people watching. I've compared our neural structure to the 16 alien species whose medical data we managed to download during our visit, Ta said. The results are fascinating. General Sun leaned forward, her eyes narrowed in concentration. As head of Earth's unified defense forces, she had been skeptical of this project at first. Now she rarely missed a briefing. "Tell me something useful, Doctor," she said. "We have less than 5 centuries to catch up to species that are thousands of years ahead of us." Ta smiled. "Perhaps less time than you think." He zoomed in on one of the brain scans. "It's our neural plasticity," Dr. Todd explained, pointing to the highlighted areas. "No other species adapts like we do." "Meaning what, exactly?" asked Jin Park, who had been invited to the project after his return from the Council station. "Their brains are remarkably static," Ta said. "Efficient, yes. Powerful, certainly. But once developed, they change very little throughout their lives." Hannah Kim, who had been silently watching from the corner, stepped forward. "While human brains form new connections constantly, we can learn new skills until the day we die." "Precisely," Ta said. "The Council species are specialized. Evolutionary adaptations that make them perfect for their original environments and original technologies." General Sun rubbed her chin. "And this helps us how?" Ta gestured to a table where something that looked like a thin silver crown rested. "With this interface I've developed." He picked up the device carefully. "It's based on technology we observed on the Council station. They use neural interfaces too, but only in the most basic ways. Direct command inputs, data retrieval. And with this interface you've developed," General Sun prompted, her patience wearing thin. Ta smiled. "We can integrate any technology in the galaxy and improve it. The Council species are too specialized. They can't imagine technology outside their evolutionary context. We can." He placed the device on his head. Instantly, the holographic displays in the room shifted, responding to his thoughts. "It works with any technology, not just our own," Ta continued. "Remember the strange Council ship that brought us back? I had barely 10 minutes alone with its control systems, but it was enough." He gestured again, and a new display appeared, schematics for a propulsion system unlike anything Earth had developed. "You reverse-engineered their drive?" Jin asked, astonished. "Not exactly. I understood it. Then I improved it." Ta's eyes were bright with excitement. "They'd been using the same design for 3,000 years. It never occurred to them to combine it with gravitational field manipulation. They developed technology in straight lines, each species building only on what their ancestors created." Hannah stepped closer to examine the schematics, while humans make connections no one else sees. Ta finished for her. "We think sideways, upside down, inside out. It's how our brains evolved, finding patterns, making leaps." General Sun walked slowly around the table, examining the silver crown from every angle. "How many of these can you make?" "Hundreds with current resources. Thousands if the project gets full backing." "And how long before we could apply this to actual spacecraft?" "Weapons systems." Tai exchanged glances with Hannah. "The neural interface works now. Building the hardware to implement our improvements will take longer. 2 years, perhaps 3. Not 500. General Sun asked with the first smile anyone had seen from her in months. "Definitely not 500, Ta confirmed. Jin picked up the neural interface, turning it over in his hands. "The Council isn't monitoring for this kind of advancement. They expect us to develop along the same predictable path every other species has followed. They've never encountered humans before," Hannah said. "Their mistake was giving us a glimpse of what's possible. They thought they were showing us how far behind we are." Instead, Ta said, "They showed us exactly what we needed to catch up." General Sun nodded decisively. "I'll inform the world leaders. This project gets whatever it needs." She looked at each person in the room. "The Galactic Council thinks they have centuries to worry about humanity. Let's make sure they don't have nearly that long." The shuttle docked silently at what official records listed as Luna Mining Station 17. Decommissioned. Jin Park watched through the viewport as the airlock cycled, revealing the truth behind this fiction. What had once been a modest helium-3 extraction facility had transformed over the past 18 months into humanity's most advanced research installation. Jin floated through the entrance corridor, adjusting to the lunar gravity with practiced ease. The Council's monitoring satellites regularly scanned the moon's surface, but they paid little attention to abandoned structures. Their programming focused on detecting new construction or unusual energy signatures, not repurposed facilities running on carefully shielded power systems. Captain Park. Engineer Dag greeted him at the inner door, his face tired but eyes bright with excitement. "You're just in time for the demonstration." Jin followed Da through a maze of corridors. The facility bustled with activity, scientists and engineers from every nation working side by side, neural interfaces glinting on their temples. "How's the progress?" Jin asked. "Better than scheduled," Day replied. Dr. Tay's interface changed everything. "We're making connections the Council species never considered." They entered a large chamber that had once housed mining equipment. Now it contained what looked like a small spacecraft, sleek and silver, unlike the bulky vessels in Earth's current fleet. "Is that our prototype?" Da confirmed. "First ship with the hybrid drive. 3 times faster than anything the Council demonstrated. And it runs silent. No energy signature they can detect." Jin walked around the vessel, admiring its lines. "How soon before it's ready?" 2 weeks for the test flight. But that's not what I wanted to show you." Dad led Jin to a side room filled with holographic displays. "This is our defense division." A female engineer nodded to Jin as they entered. She tapped her neural interface, and a simulation appeared in the center of the room, a recreation of a Council military vessel firing on a much smaller Earth ship. "Watch what happens," Dad said. In the simulation, the Council weapon fired, a stream of particles that Jin recognized from the technical data they gathered. But instead of the Earth ship being destroyed, a strange field appeared around it. The attack seemed to bend around the vessel, dissipating harmlessly. "Their weapons are powerful but predictable," Dad told Jin, demonstrating the hybrid shield system. "They haven't fundamentally changed their approach to offensive technology in over 1,000 years. Why would they? Nothing has challenged them." Jin studied the simulation, and our shield works against all their known weapons. 93% effective in simulations, the female engineer reported. "We're working on the remaining scenarios." Day's expression grew serious. "But Jin, there's more. Much more." He tapped his neural interface, and the displays changed to show text in the Council's standard language. "You cracked their encryption?" Jin asked, surprised. "Last month. We've been mining their database ever since, carefully so they don't notice the intrusion." Da highlighted sections of text. "And I found something else. Records showing other pre-emergent species that mysteriously disappeared shortly after classification. I don't think we're the first they try to contain." Jin felt a chill. "Disappeared how?" "Some records indicate natural disasters, asteroid impacts, solar flares. Others mention internal conflicts that led to self-destruction." Day's voice dropped. "But the pattern is clear. Species that show unusual potential get classified as pre-emergent, restricted to their systems, and within a few hundred years, they're gone." "You think the Council is eliminating potential rivals?" "Not the entire Council. A faction within it, calling themselves the Preservers. They believe galactic stability requires controlling which species advance and which don't." Jin studied the data with growing alarm. "How many species?" 17 in the last 5,000 years, all with unusual attributes that might have challenged Council dominance. One species had exceptional mathematical abilities. Another could process information faster than any known species. And one, Dot paused, highlighting a particular entry, showed unusual neural adaptability. Like humans. Jin looked up sharply. Have they targeted us specifically? Not yet. According to their communications, we're still considered harmless, centuries away from being a concern. Day's lips curved into a grim smile. Their assessment deadline to reevaluate Earth isn't for another 20 years. By which time we'll be ready. Dai finished. The question is, do we wait for them to realize their mistake, or do we make the first move? Jin considered the prototype ship, the shield technology, and the disturbing records. Hannah and General Sun need to see this immediately. If what you found is correct, we're not just racing to prove ourselves. No, Da agreed quietly. We're racing to survive. Exactly 5 years after humanity's classification as pre-emergent, an unmarked human ship appeared at the edge of Council space. It bypassed the monitoring station at the edge of Sol system without triggering a single alert. By the time the Council realized what had happened, the ship had already docked at their central station. The Council chambers erupted in confusion as Dr. Hannah Kim strode into the Grand Hall unannounced. She wore a simple black uniform with no visible technology, yet she moved with absolute confidence through the security fields that should have stopped any unauthorized visitor. "This is unprecedented," shouted a delegate with feathered crests. "Humans are restricted to their system." High Counselor Mev rose from the central platform, crystalline features catching the light. "Explain this intrusion immediately." Hannah stopped in the center of the chamber and looked up, meeting Mev's gaze without flinching. "I come with a formal message from Earth." Ambassador Toll pushed forward through the crowd. "Your presence here violates Council directive. How did you even reach this station?" "That's part of why I'm here," Hannah replied calmly. "Earth formally challenges its classification," she announced to the stunned Council. The chamber fell silent for 3 heartbeats before erupting in sounds the translator identified as laughter. Ambassador Toll laughed openly, his skin rippling with color patterns that indicated amusement. "On what grounds?" Toll asked between bursts of laughter. "Your species can barely manage interplanetary travel. It's been a mere 5 years since your classification. You have centuries to go before reconsideration is even possible." Hannah didn't react to the mockery. She simply waited for the laughter to subside, standing perfectly still in the center of the chamber. "Our grounds are simple," she finally said. "The classification was wrong. Earth is not pre-emergent. We never were." "Ridiculous," huffed a delegate with multiple eyes. "The Council's assessment protocols have been refined over thousands of years. Yet they fail to accurately measure human potential," Hannah countered. "We request a reassessment." High Counselor Mev leaned forward. "Such a request requires evidence of extraordinary advancement. Do you claim to have achieved faster than light travel, unified field manipulation, biological immortality?" Hannah smiled thinly. "A demonstration, then. Your best military vessel against ours." The laughter returned, louder this time. "You propose a military challenge?" Ambassador Toll asked incredulously. "The Council's defensive fleet includes vessels that could reduce your entire planet to ash." "One ship," Hannah insisted, "against one of ours. In neutral space, with the entire Council as witness." Whispers spread through the chamber as delegates conferred. Hannah stood unwavering, her expression calm despite the growing tension. Finally, High Counselor Mev raised their arms for silence. "This is highly irregular. No species has ever challenged their classification in this manner." "Perhaps because no species was ever so wrongly classified," Hannah suggested. Ambassador Toll approached Mev and spoke quietly, though Hannah's enhanced hearing caught every word. "This is an opportunity to end human defiance permanently. One public demonstration of their inferiority, and they will accept their place for centuries." Mev considered this, then turned back to Hana. The Council will accept your challenge, human. Our flagship, the Immutable Truth, will meet your vessel at the coordinates of our choosing. Tomorrow, Hana said firmly. We're ready now. This brought another wave of amused sounds from the assembly. So eager for your lesson? Toll asked with what passed for a smile on his face. Very well. The demonstration will take place tomorrow at the neutral zone near the Arcturus sector. High Counselor Mev smirked. Accepted. The humiliation of humans will be broadcast across the galaxy as a reminder of the Council's wisdom in classification matters. Hana bowed slightly. We look forward to it. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. The ship that will represent Earth is already in position at Arcturus. Captain Jin Park sends his regards. The chamber erupted again, this time in confusion and alarm. No one had detected a human ship traveling that far into Council space. It should have been impossible. As Hana walked out, Ambassador Toll hurried after her. This is madness, he hissed. You cannot possibly hope to win. Hana stopped and looked at him with clear, steady eyes. That's the difference between us, Ambassador. You cannot imagine what we can do because it lies outside your experience. But humans, imagination is what we do best. The Dauntless hung in space, its sleek hull catching the light of the nearby star. At a tenth the size of the Council's flagship Immutable Truth, the human vessel appeared almost fragile against the massive dreadnought that approached. Thousands of Council ships surrounded the designated area, maintaining distance but ensuring clear observation of what most considered a brief, pointless demonstration. Inside the Dauntless, Captain Jin Park sat calmly in the command chair. His neural interface glowed softly at his temple, linking him directly to every system on the ship. Around him, the crew of 12, Earth's finest pilots, engineers, and tactical officers, prepared for the encounter that would determine humanity's future. Council flagship is hailing us, reported Communications Officer Min. Jin nodded. On screen, Commander Rel of the Council forces appeared, his scaled face set in what passed for a smile among his species. Human vessel, this is your final opportunity to withdraw your challenge and return to your system with dignity. The Immutable Truth has never been defeated in combat. We appreciate your concern, Jin replied evenly, but we will proceed as agreed. Rel made a dismissive gesture. Very well. The terms are simple. You will demonstrate your supposed advancement by surviving an attack from our main weapons system for 60 seconds. Should you succeed, which you want, the Council will consider reviewing your classification. The transmission ended abruptly. Engineer Da looked up from his station. Their weapons systems are powering up, exactly as expected. Standard photon cannon configuration. All hands ready, Jin ordered. Shields at standby. Adaptation protocols online. In the Council chambers, the entire assembly watched the enormous view screen. High Counselor Mev sat with Ambassador Toll and other senior officials in a special observation area. This will be instructive for other pre-emergent species, Toll remarked. A clear reminder of the consequences of defiance. Hana Kim, who had been permitted to observe from a small platform, said nothing. Her eyes never left the screen. In space, the Immutable Truth's forward section began to glow as its main weapon charged. The energy buildup was visible even to the naked eye, a gathering storm of power. Target locked, Commander Rel announced to his crew. Fire when ready. The blast that erupted from the Council flagship was blinding, a concentrated beam of energy that could shatter small moons. It streaked across space directly toward the Dauntless. Jin's voice was steady. Commence demonstration. When the Council ship fired, the Dauntless didn't just evade, it adapted. Instead of the expected evasive maneuver, the human ship remained perfectly still. A millisecond before impact, its shields activated, not the solid barrier of traditional defenses, but a swirling, dynamic field that seemed to pulse with awareness. The energy beam struck the shield, and something remarkable happened. Rather than being deflected or absorbed, the attack seemed to flow around and through the Dauntless in complex patterns. Impossible. Commander Rel of the Council Forces shouted, rising from his chair. Increase power. Full discharge. The immutable truth's beam intensified, pouring enough energy to vaporize a small city into its attack. The Dauntless's shields brightened, but held firm. Then, to the astonishment of every watching species, the human vessel began to change. Its hull reconfigured, panels shifting and realigning as it processed the incoming energy. "Sir," reported Da, "energy capture at 87% efficiency. Systems adapting faster than simulated." Jin nodded. "Proceed to Phase 2. The Dauntless suddenly cut its shields. For a split second, it appeared vulnerable, until observers realized the attack beam was no longer reaching it. Instead, the energy curved around the human vessel as if repelled by some invisible force. "They're manipulating the space-time field itself," gasped a council scientist, watching the readings. "That's theoretically impossible for their technological level." In the council chamber, silence fell as the impossible unfolded before them. The human vessel transformed its captured energy into a new weapon configuration never before seen. A pulse emanated from the Dauntless, not directed at the immutable truth, but at the space surrounding it. The Council flagship suddenly froze in place, its engines flaring but producing no movement. Its weapons powered down automatically as system after system reported failures. "What have you done?" Commander Rel demanded over the still-functioning communication channel. "Localized physics modification," Jin explained calmly. "Your ship is currently in a bubble where certain natural laws are temporarily altered. Your weapons cannot function there. Neither can your engines." The council chambers erupted in chaos as delegates witnessed their undefeated flagship effectively neutralized without a single offensive shot fired. "Do you yield?" Jin asked. Commander Rel looked around his disabled bridge, at officers frantically trying to restore systems. With visible reluctance, he gave a gesture of submission. The immutable truth surrenders. In the council chamber, Hannah Kim finally allowed herself a small smile as High Counselor Mev and Ambassador Toll stared at the screen in shocked silence. 1 week after the demonstration that shocked the galaxy, the council reconvened. The Grand Chamber, usually arranged with precise hierarchical seating, had been reorganized. The human delegation now sat at a new platform, elevated to the level of established species. High Counselor Mev's crystalline features showed no emotion as they addressed the assembly. Beside them, Ambassador Toll seemed diminished, his skin patterns muted in what humans had learned indicated discomfort or shame. After reviewing the evidence presented by the Sol 3 delegation, Mev began, their voice echoing through the silent chamber. And in light of the recent demonstration of technological capability, the Council has reached a decision. Jin and Hannah sat side by side, their faces calm despite the tension that filled the room. Behind them stood Dr. Ta and General Sun, representing Earth's scientific and military leadership. "Humanity is reclassified as emergent," Mev announced begrudgingly. "All restrictions on their movement and development are hereby lifted." Jin and Hannah exchanged glances as the chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Some delegates shouted protests while others whispered urgently to their neighbors. "This is unprecedented," called out a delegate with feathered crests. "No species has ever advanced classification so quickly. No species has ever been so incorrectly classified," Hannah responded, her voice carrying clearly. Mev raised their arms for silence. "The Council acknowledges that our assessment protocols may have failed to accurately measure human potential. This will be reviewed." Jin stepped forward. "We appreciate the Council's decision. Earth looks forward to peaceful exchange of knowledge and resources with all species." What Jin didn't say, what everyone in the chamber knew, was that humanity had demonstrated power that couldn't be ignored. The Dauntless had beaten the immutable truth without firing a single offensive shot. No one knew what other capabilities humans might have developed. Additionally, Hannah stated, standing to address the assembly, We propose an alliance of formerly restricted species. Earth extends an invitation to all pre-emergent classified worlds to send representatives to discuss mutual advancement. This caused another wave of commotion. Ambassador Toll finally spoke, his voice sharp. You overstep, human. Pre-emergent species cannot form alliances without council approval. They can now, General Sun said simply, unless the council wishes another demonstration. The threat was clear. No one in the chamber misunderstood. High Counselor Mev conferred briefly with other council leaders before responding. The council will permit this initiative, provided all technological exchanges are reported and monitored. Of course, Hana agreed smoothly. Transparency benefits everyone. As the session closed, Jin watched the delegates filing out. Many avoided looking at the humans, while others studied them with new interest. They're afraid of us now, Jin said quietly to Hana. Better than being dismissed, she replied. Fear can become respect, given time. Within months, Earth became a hub for delegations from planets long dismissed by the Council. The first to arrive were the Nilari, a species classified as pre-emergent for 300 years, despite developing remarkable biological sciences. Then came the Vosh, with their intuitive understanding of quantum mathematics, and the Tyrell, whose art forms contained complex information, encoding that the Council had never recognized. Earth shared its neural interface technology freely, adapting it to each species' unique biology. In return, they gained knowledge from across the galaxy, knowledge the Council had carefully restricted. Jin stood at the window of the new Galactic Cooperation Center in Geneva, watching representatives from 17 different worlds mingling in the garden below. Some species that had been classified as primitive for centuries were already showing remarkable advancement when given access to information and technology. They're calling it the human revolution, Hana said, joining him at the window. A complete restructuring of galactic society. Not a revolution, Jin corrected. An evolution. A natural progression that was artificially suppressed. In the central meeting hall below, delegates gathered for Jin's address. He walked to the podium and looked out at the diverse assembly, beings of all shapes, sizes, and evolutionary paths. They laughed at us, Jin told the assembled representatives as they unveiled Earth's adaptive technology for their allies. Now they'll learn what real galactic cooperation looks like. He touched the neural interface at his temple, and a holographic display activated, showing the new joint fleet, ships created through the combined knowledge of 20 worlds, each contributing their unique perspective. The Council believed diversity was a weakness to be managed, Jin continued. We know it's the greatest strength in the universe. No single species has all the answers, but together, adapting, connecting, sharing, there's nothing we can't achieve. As the delegates cheered, somewhere on the other side of the galaxy, the Council was already beginning to change. New assessment protocols were being developed, old restrictions were being questioned, and humanity, once dismissed as barely worth noticing, had become impossible to ignore. 1 week after the demonstration that shocked the galaxy, the Council reconvened. The Grand Chamber, usually arranged with precise hierarchical seating, had been reorganized. The human delegation now sat at a new platform, elevated to the level of established species. High Counselor Mev's crystalline features showed no emotion as they addressed the assembly. Beside them, Ambassador Toll seemed diminished, his skin patterns muted in what humans had learned indicated discomfort or shame. After reviewing the evidence presented by the Sol 3 delegation, Mev began, their voice echoing through the silent chamber. And in light of the recent demonstration of technological capability, the Council has reached a decision. Jin and Hana sat side by side, their faces calm despite the tension that filled the room. Behind them stood Dr. Tai and General Sun, representing Earth's scientific and military leadership. Humanity is reclassified as emergent, Mev announced begrudgingly. All restrictions on their movement and development are hereby lifted. Jin and Hana exchanged glances as the chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Some delegates shouted protests, while others whispered urgently to their neighbors. "This is unprecedented," called out a delegate with feathered crests. "No species has ever advanced classification so quickly." "No species has ever been so incorrectly classified," Hannah responded, her voice carrying clearly. Mev raised their arms for silence. "The Council acknowledges that our assessment protocols may have failed to accurately measure human potential. This will be reviewed." Jin stepped forward. "We appreciate the Council's decision. Earth looks forward to peaceful exchange of knowledge and resources with all species." What Jin didn't say, what everyone in the chamber knew, was that humanity had demonstrated power that couldn't be ignored. The Dauntless had beaten the immutable truth without firing a single offensive shot. No one knew what other capabilities humans might have developed. Additionally, Hannah stated, standing to address the assembly, "We propose an alliance of formerly restricted species. Earth extends an invitation to all pre-emergent classified worlds to send representatives to discuss mutual advancement." This caused another wave of commotion. Ambassador Toll finally spoke, his voice sharp. "You overstep, human. Pre-emergent species cannot form alliances without Council approval." "They can now," General Sun said simply, "unless the Council wishes another demonstration." The threat was clear. No one in the chamber misunderstood. High Counselor Mev conferred briefly with other council leaders before responding. "The Council will permit this initiative, provided all technological exchanges are reported and monitored." "Of course," Hannah agreed smoothly. "Transparency benefits everyone." As the session closed, Jin watched the delegates filing out. Many avoided looking at the humans, while others studied them with new interest. "They're afraid of us now," Jin said quietly to Hannah. "Better than being dismissed," she replied. "Fear can become respect, given time." Within months, Earth became a hub for delegations from planets long dismissed by the Council. The first to arrive were the Nilari, a species classified as pre-emergent for 300 years, despite developing remarkable biological sciences. Then came the Vosh, with their intuitive understanding of quantum mathematics, and the Terrell, whose art forms contained complex information, encoding that the Council had never recognized. Earth shared its neural interface technology freely, adapting it to each species' unique biology. In return, they gained knowledge from across the galaxy, knowledge the Council had carefully restricted. Jin stood at the window of the new Galactic Cooperation Center in Geneva, watching representatives from 17 different worlds mingling in the garden below. Some species that had been classified as primitive for centuries were already showing remarkable advancement when given access to information and technology. "They're calling it the human revolution," Hannah said, joining him at the window. "A complete restructuring of galactic society." "Not a revolution," Jin corrected. "An evolution. A natural progression that was artificially suppressed." In the central meeting hall below, delegates gathered for Jin's address. He walked to the podium and looked out at the diverse assembly, beings of all shapes, sizes, and evolutionary paths. "They laughed at us," Jin told the assembled representatives as they unveiled Earth's adaptive technology for their allies. "Now they'll learn what real galactic cooperation looks like." He touched the neural interface at his temple, and the holographic display activated, showing the new joint fleet, ships created through the combined knowledge of 20 worlds, each contributing their unique perspective. "The Council believed diversity was a weakness to be managed," Jin continued. "We know it's the greatest strength in the universe. No single species has all the answers, but together, adapting, connecting, sharing, there's nothing we can't achieve." As the delegates cheered, somewhere on the other side of the galaxy, the Council was already beginning to change. New assessment protocols were being developed, old restrictions were being questioned, and humanity, once dismissed as barely worth noticing, had become impossible to ignore.